Hi everyone, my name is Gilbert Shupe. Thanks for joining me as I attempt to dive into the ethics issue associated with utilities energy efficient equipment. This is in fulfillment of a requirement by Dr. Greene of Eastern New Mexico University, Fall 2015 Business Ethics course. The way I designed this presentation was not with PowerPoint, but actually with Microsoft's new software called Sway. I thought I'd give this a trial run and see how well it works. It seems kind of cool, so hopefully it works out. Anyways, the purpose of my presentation is basically what you have to look at as a utility company. Electric utilities are in the business of making money. The more electricity you consume, the more money that they make. That's the economics of it. So I find it interesting that utility companies are constantly incentivizing the purchase of solar panels and of CFL light bulbs and encouraging people to buy higher efficiency air conditioners. And so I picked this topic because that doesn't make sense to me. I don't fully understand how it would be in a utility company's best interests to encourage people to use less of their product. So what do I mean by that? For those of you that don't know, most utility companies in the country do offer various incentive programs, and the U.S. Department of Energy actually has a website that's dedicated to this. You can see here solar water heating, and these are just the names of various programs. I'm actually going to go ahead and click on one. I made a few of these hyperlinks so that we can see what we mean. And as you can see here, we're at the U.S. Department of Energy's website, energy.gov, and because I'm in Arizona, I selected Arizona, and you can see that this administrator, SRP, that's one of our utility companies here, and this is a rebate that they had historically, but the website has past and present rebate programs. And you can see here the rebate, under the rebate amounts, they offer discounted prices on energy audits, on heat pumps, on duct testing, and CFL light bulbs, and shade screens, and the list goes on and on. And so this does exist, and you're able to, if you wanted to, you could actually go to this website, and since most of the people here are in New Mexico, I guess we can go ahead and take a quick look at New Mexico's page, and you can see as soon as this loads in just 1 second, this is a list of all past and present incentive programs offered in the state of New Mexico, not necessarily by utility companies, but just any of them that exist. They're all right here, so it's pretty convenient if you wanted to check that out. Anyways, so as I dove into the information, dug in a little bit deeper, I saw that in order to really gain an understanding of this, what we have to do is we have to look at the load curve, and we have to have a thorough understanding of what that is and what that means in order to understand the reasoning behind these rebates. So what we have here, this is an example of a load curve. Now, I developed this load curve from Excel using actual utility data. Was able to get data not only of what the demands that utility was seeing, but also the various types of power that they were utilizing in order to meet that demand. So we can go ahead and walk through it here. Now this is the demand curve. This is just one given day, going from midnight to midnight. And so you can see here, this was a summer day where it was cool about 3 in the morning, and we saw the highest peak right in here at about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening. Now, this particular utility company, in order to meet that demand, what they did was they've got what are called the baseload plants. These are power plants that run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 100% power, because you can see the lowest of the low is still higher than what these can produce. So they're constantly churning out power. The following curve is what we call the load following plants. Now those are power plants where we need them to run all of the time because the base loads by themselves are not enough. However, they will run at a reduced power when demand is low, and then run at a higher power when demand is higher. And this little sleeve, this is the important part. That's going to be the focus of our conversation. These are the peaker plants. These are power plants that actually are capable of producing much more power than that, but they don't. They only produce power as needed. And that's a very important aspect. This final part of the curve, this is solar, and this is going to be the second half of our discussion, because utility companies used to, and still do to a certain extent, incentivize the use of the purchasing of solar panels, and that's an interesting topic. This last section up here, this is purchased power. The utility company did not generate this. What they actually did was they purchased power from neighboring utilities and met their demand that way. Now, for the purposes of this discussion, we're not gonna go there. But the only thing we really need to know is that utility companies are constantly looking at the cost of electricity. The cost of it is variable. It's changing constantly, just like the stock market. And so what the utility company looks at is they say, well, is it cheaper for me to buy power, or is it cheaper for me to start up one of these peaker plants? And they weigh those options accordingly. Which is why you'll see these peaker plants are capable of producing a lot more, but they're not right now, because it was only economically justifiable for them to run that much, and it was cheaper for them to buy the rest. Anyways, so these base loads are typically coal or nuclear, while the followers and the peakers are both typically natural gas. Now that's important because the cost of those power plants, the cost of that generation, is drastically different. Now this is going to help us understand a bit why these utility companies are incentivizing bringing down their demand. Because you can see these power plants, they're expensive to build. I did the math earlier, just so I'm not sitting here using a calculator the whole time, but what we're looking at is about 3,000 megawatts of power being produced all the time. Now, the cost of generation for that, according to the U.S. Department of Energy, is about $5,500 per kilowatt. So if we do that math, that comes out to about $16.5 billion. Now you divide that capital cost by the amount of power that they are capable of producing, right? Because now they're seeing a rate of return on that capital investment. Now, for the sake of this discussion, I'm only going to use the power that was generated today. In both instances, both for the peakers and the base loads, they produced power over a 40, 60 year lifetime. But the absolute values that we're going to see here are irrelevant, but the relative values are crucial. So you can see $5,500 per kilowatt hour, and you divide that by how many kilowatt hours they produced that day, and what we end up seeing is a total cost of about $229 per kilowatt hour. Now again, that's not a real number, but that's just pretending that both of these power plants only exist for today. Now, if we look at the math here, we averaged across this 8-hour time frame about 150 megawatt output. Now, what we have to remember is that these power plants were not built to produce 150 megawatts. This particular utility company has about 2,000 megawatts in reserve power of peaker plants. So the cost of construction for these is a lot cheaper because it's only 2,000 megawatts. And according to the U.S. Department of Energy, it only costs about $1,000 per kilowatt hour to produce. So that number ends up being about $2 billion instead of the $16 billion. However, if you look at their return, and they produced on average about 150 megawatts over an 8-hour period for this day, what you end up seeing is that the total cost to produce that power was somewhere in the realm of $1,700 per kilowatt hour. Now, you can see that power, though those power plants are cheaper to build, was insanely expensive. Almost a full order of magnitude greater than the baseload plants. So now that is a very, very, very important value, because if we are to look at, let me erase everything real quick. If we were to look at what would happen if everybody switched to high efficiency air conditioners and high efficiency light bulbs and shade screens and additional insulation in their house, what you would end up doing is seeing the curve drop just like this. Now what ends up happening here is that this change in demand from here to here can be made up by doing two things: by either running the peaker